You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.
Are you ready to learn the 3 secrets to launching a successful podcast? Hi, I'm Bill, a recent client of the Podcast Mogul. If you've been thinking about starting a podcast but aren't sure where to begin, he's got you covered. He is hosting a free webinar where he will share the 3 secrets that can help you launch, grow, and monetize your podcast without any fancy equipment or technical headaches. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot now and let him help get your podcast off the ground.
Welcome to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. Join the Podcast Mogul Phil Better as he interviews successful entrepreneurs that make their living in the digital world. Now, let's join your host, Phil Better, and his special guest today on Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Invest in Yourself, the Digital Entrepreneur Podcast. I am, of course, your host with the most, Phil Better. And today's guest, I am very happy to have because I've tried the mythical place called Shopify. And it didn't work out too well for me. But we got a guy who is the guy who works in Spotify projects, supports Spotify store owners, does the marketing SEO agency stuff, developmental agencies, a whole bunch of stuff. This guy is the dude to go to who will support you and help you reach your goals on Spotify. Ladies and gentlemen, put it together for Mr. Tyler Page of the Page Media. Sir, welcome.
Hey, thank you. And it's Shopify. They get the Shopify and Spotify mixed up.
Oh, Jesus.
So much.
Oh, my God.
It's because you got the pod on Spotify, and it happens to everybody, man.
So, yeah, it's Shopify,
hard.
ladies and gentlemen, not Spotify.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah, the Shopify.
Ink on the face, ladies and gentlemen. I can't. And there was network. I'm reading this off of your webpage. I blame your webpage. It's your marketing.
That's what it is.
Copy. I don't know.
Yeah, I've got typos rampant throughout there. So yeah, that's on me. That's on me.
Tyler, besides my fumbling of the ball, you deal with Shopify. Nearly did it again. My God.
It's hard, man. It's hard.
Oh,
it's hard.
Shopify. Okay, yeah. You deal with Shopify. You build businesses, help them and all that. Before all that, let's get to know you as a person. So who is Taylor Page?
Yeah. So, the outside of the business world, I've got like a very non-traditional developer technical background. My background is actually in social work. I've got a master's degree in counseling psychology, had a whole other life before kind of like stumbling into this, teaching myself this stuff on the side. And so now just enjoying being the freelancer thing. And I got 2 small kids, and we just recently, because of that, remote work, freelancing, was able to move closer to family. We had moved away originally to there's no jobs here, or whatever. And so now it's like, it doesn't matter where you work, and that's one of the coolest things. And so that's just what I love to do. I love to now get engaged in technical problems. It's actually what I ended up doing in my other life. I've always been picked up just tech stuff real quick. And now I just get to do that all the time. So that's real exciting for me.
I love that. And I love how you've went from social work where it was probably nothing like the stuff you would be dealing with today. And you were able to get that freedom, move closer to home, back to where your parents were. You were able to get all that freedom. So when you did have to do long hours, you can drop the kids off at grandma and grandpa's.
That's right.
Built-in babysitters. I love that. Now, I want to know, so you were over in social work doing some techie stuff too. So that always resonates. I think that resonates with all our generations, and all future generations will have more of a tech. They want to know how tech can help and help our businesses or help this line of jobs or whatever, which is great. How did you go from social working and doing the world there to building Shopify stores and supporting Shopify owners?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was probably a pretty lengthy road, right? Like, it's one of those where since you didn't have the traditional education, kind of like stumbled into it. I actually originally stumbled into it. I was a full-time social worker, and then I worked actually part-time at a church. So, and I was just kind of the guy, play guitar, like, did that stuff. And then again, when there was a tech problem, I was pretty decent at fixing that stuff. And so I would help out with that. The guy that did the website left. They're like, "Hey, Taylor, you're the most technical person here. Can you do this?" And I was like, I mean, no, but I'm sure I can figure it out. And it was
FYI,
like the whole,
you're the youngest person here. You need to figure it out.
Yeah. Well, that's the tough part. There were younger people too. Like, that was just like, like, bother this guy. He's not busy, but like, that's always how it is. Right. So, but yeah, so no, it was a WordPress site, and the thing was just hacked like crazy. It was that whole standard, like, it's got all these like corrupted plugins. And so there's like this weird, like, infomercial on the site for like some Korean, like, erectile dysfunction, something or other, whatever. And you're just like, hey, like, this is not probably what you want people to see when they're coming to the website, right? What time's the service at? And it's like, what? Oh. And so, just started researching that like crazy, digging into it, learning how to fix that stuff, and got it done. And then did a whole redesign on the site. And I was like, man, I love doing this. This is amazing. And everyone else, when I was just talking about it, was just like, that sounds terrible. That I would not want to do that at all. And so, I just started researching a little bit more about like building websites, and found that I love doing it so much. So I did that for years on nights and weekends. Just learning how to do it, like building up sites, building different kinds of sites, working in different technology, transitioned to a couple of different roles and jobs. And then I ended up being a supervisor as a social worker, and just ended up again being that guy who, hey, like, we're spending 8 hours working through this spreadsheet. Like, Taylor, you're decent at Excel. Like, what can you do for us here? So like, okay, like, built a macro that like runs through this whole, 8,000 line, spreadsheet or whatever in like 5 seconds instead of like, 8 hours or whatever, and just eliminated, hours worth of work. So I kept finding stuff like that over and over again, like, hey, like, text the solution to fix this or whatever. And so then I started looking at building websites as a really something that I could feasibly do, because like I got to the point I was doing it myself. But just that, probably that limiting thing of like, well, I'm a social worker. I can't be a web developer. So like I couldn't try and like go get a job somewhere building websites, or the idea of freelancing never even came to mind. Cause I mean, that's, I'm a pretty conservative person in regards to like risk. Mm-hmm. And we, around this time we just had our first kid. And so like, now like really averse to risk, in the social work world, especially as a dude, it's primarily an effeminate field. It's mostly women. And so if you're a guy, usually what happens is you get all the really tough cases and the cases that cannot work with females. So you get the really aggressive, really tough people. And I'm 6 foot, 250, big bearded guy walks into the room, usually that's like, okay, Taylor can handle that person. And so, we go from like, I can't do this, and I'm really good at my job here, doing all this other stuff, to like, I'd really love to do this stuff. So all that is say, I couldn't. It's one of those things where it's really hard to get fired, as long as you don't do something unethical or whatever. Like, it's a rock solid job. There's always funding for it.
It's a government job, of course.
Yeah, like your position's not going to be gone, and so they need that stuff. And so, and I see like all the time, in tech, there's layoffs and things like that or whatever. Every time there's any kind of an inkling of a potential recession or whatever. And so, anyway, did a couple of things. Eventually transitioned to a smaller agency where I wasn't a supervisor, and because I got the opportunity to work with an old boss who's like, hey, come work for me. I'll let you do. I know you love the tech stuff, and I don't have. We're too small to have an IT department, so I need someone who's techie. And so you can kind of do this stuff and also be a social worker. I'll pay you really well for a social worker. And, it's the best that I can do. And it's like, all right, great. I don't want to do this anymore. So stepped into that, and it let me really explore a lot of that. I got to build the agency website, did some stuff with, SharePoint instances and migrating email stuff and like, not stuff that I wanted to work in. So, I just got to do more tech related stuff. And so that was really, really great to have that opportunity to do that. But it really kept pushing me just more and more into like, man, I could do this full time and I'd be so happy, and you get to a certain point in social work, you just kind of get burnt out. It's not an easy thing. In addition to tough situations, you're dealing with a lot of like bureaucracy and paperwork, and you're just trying to help people. And so there's a lot of that going on too. So anyways, got the opportunity at a certain point. I was like, you know what? A local web dev job popped up, and local agency. I loved the agency. I thought the tech that they were working with and everything they were doing was super cool. So got the interview. Nailed the first interview. They were really happy and wanted me to come in for the second interview. Awesome. Did well. They ended up passing me over for another person who actually had experience, right? We're not going to hire like the social worker. We have someone with experience who has applied. And even though his portfolio is great, he answered all of our questions really well. He's relatively likable. This guy has experience and this guy doesn't. So it's, easy sell on their part. But just had some real honest conversations with the person and with the agency. And I was like, after talking to her, I was like, I don't know that the role would be really what I would want. And so this idea of freelancing started becoming more and more of a thing until eventually, I had done it like kind of like here and there. It was diaper money is what I called it. I made $500 here, $500 there, building these little rinky dink sites, couldn't do it full time, and eventually stumbled into Shopify and did some remote work just on Upwork. Just started getting some real traction there. And after I started doing some stuff on Upwork and had a portfolio, started getting people that weren't on Upwork, which is great because then you don't have to pay Upwork their cut. It just kept going from there. And at a certain point, I got approved to have like an expert listing in Shopify's expert marketplace. So they actually took a look at my work, made sure that I knew what I was talking about, and then started getting jobs from there. So I've been really fortunate to be in a lot of like really good positions until I was able to finally just take it full time. And so now, get to be my own boss, control my own schedule, and making way better money than being a social worker. So that's great. It's easier to get fired, I guess. But at least there's a lot of upsides there, and I've really just been enjoying that part of it.
But you may be able to get fired quickly, but you also get hired just as quickly.
That's true. Yeah, that's a real good point. I can't remember who I heard talk about that was, they were talking about freelancing or being your own boss being not as safe, right? As opposed to like a full-time W-2 job or whatever. And that is the difference, right? Like, well, shoot, like if I did get fired by a client, like I could just go out and get another one. You know what I mean? Like that's just, it's totally different. So yeah, totally different mindset, than just regular employment, right?
It's very true. I'm so glad I became an entrepreneur now.
Yeah.
Freedom is very, very nice. Plus you like looking at it as a family. Yes, the risk is very high. And I love how you said you were very unrisky at the start of it and still probably are conservatively risky. And you built up, you're like, okay, I'm built up. You built up your skill set to a point where it was like more in demand. And then you were like, I have the freedom to leave. You got to the point where it was like, it didn't make sense to stay here. I made what I make in a year in like 20 minutes. Like that doesn't make sense.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It was pretty substantial. Mm-hmm.
So your why was just, I just wanted to learn, like pretty much you just wanted to learn. And then you got to a point where you're like, well, my knowledge, I can make a living off my knowledge.
Yeah, the initial start of it was just like, man, this is so cool. Just being able to like build something online. Like to me, that's really great. I wasn't like a super, I didn't grow up like a super handy guy where I could just like, build a shed or something out of whatever scrap wood's in the backyard or whatever. But, being able to build that online with just, a couple of lines of code and stuff like that. I thought that was amazing,
I love that. Now that you're doing this, how long have you been doing the full-time freelancing Shopify god, if you will?
So I've only been doing the full-time freelancing for like 2 years now. So it's relatively new for full-time. I've been doing this, gosh, like on the part-time leading up to whatever, I've been doing this since 2018 is when I started taking gigs on the side and stuff like that. And so, but like learning, even getting to that point where I felt confident enough that I'm like, I could charge money for my skill set. I mean, that was almost 10 years ago. I mean, 10 years ago almost. And so, and probably one of the biggest mistakes is waiting so long, right? Getting over that initial piece there. I could have been doing this for a lot longer.
I love it. And I love how you took your time with your skill set. Like you didn't jump straight into going freelancing. You said, I built up some equity. We made sure we started with diaper money, saw that it could become more. And it's a great story of some entrepreneurs that I've had on the show, that they've taken their time because they know how risky it is. Plus having a family, like that's a major risk, because you're not only feeding yourself. Like I can go 2 days without eating. It's fine. Grumpy Phil will happen, but like it's survivable. But you can't a baby. No, that's
no. Yeah. And even now, 45 minutes, every 45 minutes, they need a snack or something. And then, if not, something's getting broken or whatever. So yeah.
But on the plus side, you get to spend as much time as you want with them and grow up, which was, was that something that you wanted when you were thinking about having kids, being able to be present in their life as much? I don't want to, because I don't know about your parents, if they were how it was done, but like for me, both my parents were worked, so I didn't really have them when I was young. So I was just wondering for you.
Yeah, no, I was really fortunate growing up. My parents were fantastic. And my dad and mom were actually both ministers. So that's my background, in church and stuff and ministry and everything or whatever. But my dad did work, and my mom got to stay home with us even. And so I was homeschooled for part of my upbringing. Went back to school because I wanted to play football. And so they kind of gave us this choice after, we got to 8th grade, high school age or whatever, if we wanted to kind of go back. And so, did that and loved it. But yeah, no, my dad actually, the way his work was even set up, because pastors work on Sundays. And so he had Fridays off. And so whenever we were homeschooled, what we did is we did a 4-day school work week. So we worked extra Monday through Thursday, so we could just have a 3-day weekend every single weekend. And that was a lot of fun. We used it to, go and do things or whatever. And so I've really enjoyed the idea. It's important to me to be able to be around and be very present. And my wife and I have talked about that pretty much extensively, especially when I started, making some of that diaper money on the side, freelancing. So between being, a social worker, and for a time I was a supervisor, so I was making like better money than a regular level social worker. Right. But my hours were way, way, way more. And my wife and I had a conversation at one point where we were just like, we talk a lot about making more money, and that's great. But like we found trying to use money as a primary motivator never worked out really well, because that's kind of what it came down to. I was like, I can always work more, like I'll go pick up a job, working overnight at a gas station or something. Like, as long as I get 4 hours of sleep, I'm pretty much good. So like we could always do that, but I think we value our time more than we value money. So like, as long as we can, we're not living like to where we don't know if the rent check's going to clear or something like that or whatever, where you've got that anxiety and stuff, I think we're doing great. And that really started to change a lot of my positioning from like, I don't have goals, even in my business. I don't have goals. Like, I don't need to be $1 million business. I don't need to make $1 million a year as a freelancer. I'm not going to try to take opportunities. I'm not interested in trying to work for like Netflix or Google or something like that, because I know what it takes to work at something at that caliber and level. Right. And just I feel like my time's worth more than that. So I definitely want to provide for my family so we can all live comfortably and those sorts of things too. But I don't need to like make bucketfuls of money. I don't need Scrooge McDuck money. You know what I mean? I just need for anybody, hopefully most people listening will get that reference, and I won't sound too old there, but to me, like our time is our biggest commodity, like as far as what's most important. So the freedom that freelancing or just being your own boss allows for, I think that's huge.
I love that. I want to know, in your journey so far, there must be a memory that you've had either to cement why you started the freelancing. Like maybe you guys hit an achievement with you and your family, or you were able to do something that you never thought you were able to, or a win that you were able to help a client with. That just cements like, yeah, I love what I do.
Well, I think, and maybe I think this is kind of what we're getting at a little bit of like, so my memory of that always sticks out to me when I'm talking to people about like freelancing or starting off or like big wins is before I was really like in freelancing full time, or I had switched to really just specializing in Shopify. My wife and I had actually built up a Shopify dropshipping store. I had read about dropshipping, thought we were going to hit it rich, and started a store. We're going to like pay off all of our student loans. Everything's going to be great. So we made $30 on the store that year, which means we lost like $300 in hosting fees and stuff, but that's all right. It was a good learning experience. So that was when I first got introduced, kind of like the idea of Shopify initially. And at the time I was in a local web developer group. Guy reaches out and says he needed some help on a project for a Shopify store. I was like, great. I've done a store. I've been in the code. I'm really familiar with how things work. So anyways, long story short, did the work. It wasn't like hard, right? He was stuck. He needed this fixed. And I was like, this is really easy, man. And he was like, well, I'll pay you. And I was like, no, it's fine. Like it's, I'm good with trading at goodwill. You're in this local group. Like we're helping each other. Buddies helping buddies out. Anyways, long story short, found out like he was actually the head of an agency, a big agency. And this was for a big Shopify Plus client, which Shopify Plus in the Shopify world is the highest tier plan where they're paying $2,000 a month. So usually they're making at least $50 to $100K in revenue a month. And this guy, so this is massive project where this guy was working on this really big brand. And, me, the great business mind that I am was like, no, it's cool, man. Like I'll fix this small problem for you, for free of charge and stuff. So anyways, the long story short, that the memory for me, obviously getting the client though, went and getting that fixed for him with him saving face and not making it look like he doesn't know what he's talking about in Shopify and stuff or anything like that. Which he's a great guy. He wrote me a really kind review and stuff afterwards as well. And that kind of helped, but that kind of clicked for me. And that was kind of the point where I realized like, I could do this. Like I could just work in Shopify projects and I could crank out work and provide real value in this space. And after that, like, that's just when the business started taking off. I got to the point where, revenue each month was like doubling and tripling from my little, $500 a month here and there kind of type deal. And, I was finally able to have that conversation with my wife of like, I think I could do this full time. And she was super supportive and on board. And that's kind of like what launched my freelance business full time. And so, that'll always stick out to me is like just that point where it's just like, oh man, like, holy cow, like I can do this. So yeah, that's probably the biggest memory there for me.
I love that. That's a great memory to have. Mm-hmm. When you come in, yeah, I've done Shopify. I can help you. One store under your belt made $30. Yep. And then you come in and you save this multi-figure business. That's yep. An awesome badge to have. What tip would you have? Let's say I'm about to start a Shopify, jumping into the world of Shopify. I want to try building a brand. Maybe I have a brand and I'm like, okay, maybe I'm going to create merch for it and I'm going to use Shopify. What's maybe a tip you have? No, you know what? Better yet, because you come from the world of government and like super safety.
Right.
I want to talk to that audience because this audience is probably be more along those lines. What tip do you have for them to go into the freelancing? Like, obviously freelancing worked for you. We're talking to that type of audience member right now that's super conservative in the risk area, maybe not in life, but just specifically for risk. They're listening to you like, hey, that's maybe something I can do. What tip do you have for them?
Probably the tips that I would have for that specifically would be get real specific on the things you're afraid of, and then actually write down solutions to those. So, for example, like, a real good example of that would be, like I said, at the time we had just had our first kid. I'm really conservative in decision making, and So the idea is like, we're not going to be able to pay our mortgage, right? Like I'm not going to be able to put food on the table or whatever. And so that's the biggest thing. Like, what do I need to make each month in order? That's the real question. The heart of the real question is, I'm not going to make enough money each month. And so now the antithesis of that, the solution to that is get real specific on, well, how much money do I need to make each month to make this work? And my wife and I just sat down and kind of like figured out, like, here's what I make right now. Like, here's, including things like, you want to consider benefits and stuff. Cause obviously if you're based in the US, that shifts things around as well. If you're, relying on your employer based benefits and stuff like that. But like, take an honest look at that. And then I came up with a number. And the number was so much lower than what I thought it was. Cause social workers don't make good money. So it's like, you're already not making really good money. And part-time nights and weekends, I was already doing, a little bit over half that really fast when I started just focusing on Shopify. And so when I saw that, I was like, well, shoot, if I did this full time, then feasibly I could double or triple this and be making way better money. So for me, like if you're speaking to ultra conservative decision-making folks or whatever, just come up with direct solutions to that. Like if you're worried about not making enough money each month, figure out what your number actually is. And then, be honest about that. We also did, saved up a little bit extra runway. Some people call it like an emergency savings account or something like that. So we had our little emergency fund account. And then that way, if I was under some months, we had a couple extra grand to like pull in if like I'd made $0 a month or something like that. And that never happened. We never had to touch the money or anything. So, just really grateful that we thought about that. My wife thought about that. I try to take credit for it, but she's the smart one between the two of us. And so she was like, well, just how much money do you think you need to make? And like I said, after we crunched the numbers, it was in my mind, just I for some reason was aggrandizing how much I actually made as a social worker. And it turns out it was not that much. So,
you're like, that's her.
Yeah. So, but yeah, like, so that's what I would say for those folks, and just like get real specific, like create an actual action plan on if you're, whether it's, you're worried about like not doing this, not doing that. Some people are worried about not having enough free time. The great thing about not social work jobs, but if you're talking about a government job, they're more about like, like you're at your desk, you're there at 8, you take your lunch at this time, and then you're gone at 5. Like nobody cares what else gets done as long as you're there. Like, freelancing is different, right? Like you've got to actually get work done to get paid. And so that, if it's that, then like just get real specific on what you can and can't do in those regular working hours and stuff. So I still maintain a regular 40-hour work week. That obviously fluctuates. Sometimes like, you borrow a little bit from one week to throw on another week if like the kids have got something or we want to like do a little traveling or something. But ultimately, I've structured my life that way because I'm working while the kids are at school and all that stuff. I drop them off every day at work or before I start working and stuff. I don't miss stuff, and that's always, important from the time aspect. So yeah, just get real specific. And I think people will be surprised. Like fears or ideas, they're a lot bigger in your head until you actually write them down. And then for some reason, when they're out there and they hit the air, it's a lot more achievable than you think it is.
I love that. We're coming up to the end, which really sucks because I'm having fun talking with you, Taylor, because you're paralleling my story of entrepreneurship. I jumped maybe a little before you did, but I could survive because I'm a single person, right? Yeah. I don't need all the food and diaper money that apparently a new father does. So that's true. But we're coming up to the final question, the spark question of the episode. You know what it is. It's about the Yes Theory gang. It's Seek Discomfort. It's to spark conversations with friends, strangers that we haven't met. This is very interesting. Did you grow up in a family that encouraged you to take risks? Explain.
Oh, no. So no, we were not in a risky household at all. So I grew up I had mentioned both my parents were ministers. So fairly conservative just across the board in regards to upbringing there. And so the idea was, even when it comes to some stuff I had to overcome there from a personal standpoint, because there is an older mindset too of like, making money is not good. Making money is evil, so you shouldn't want to make money. And part of like the pull of a lot of entrepreneurs is, well, I want to make better money. Right. And so that's kind of what it moved to when I originally chose social work as a profession. So I've got a degree, master's degree in counseling psychology. Like I spent all this time doing all this stuff so I could learn how to really take care of people, like, really communicate with people. End up doing social work because I just, I did a couple of internships, and that was just like what pulled at me at the time. I knew I could do some good there. It took me a while to realize it's like, oh, like this was just like, I figured out how to work in a church. I knew I didn't want to work in a church after growing up with all of that, but like I wanted to still do that same mission of helping people. And so that's what it ended up being, was social work. So like the idea was never to be risky or anything like that, or to make like good money or anything like that. The idea was to play it safe, go to college, take on massive amounts of debt, and get a job where you can't get fired from. And so like I knocked that out of the park with social work. Just very, very different. Definitely not risky thinking at all.
No, you're the fully opposite of the risk. And I love how the questions just resonate with the whole episode.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Right. Taylor, I'm going to jump off screen here. And I promise it was not planned. Like this is like they're just one after another. I'm going to jump off screen. Tell my audience where they can find you, follow you, support you. And if they're looking to get some help with their Shopify, not Spotify, Shopify, how they can get with you. So the floor, sir, is yours.
Yeah. So, if you are looking to learn more about Shopify, I've started to create content on YouTube. So you can find me at youtube.com/@trpage_dev. That would be one of the easiest ways to do that. Or even more simply, I do have a website under the business that I operate. So I'm a freelancer, but I operate under the Pages Media. So and then Pages, like my last name, Pages, and then media.com. You'll find a whole bunch of information on there. I try to post information in the blog as well. If I do a video, I move it to the blog as well. And so hopefully that's helpful as far as finding any other potential resources. Otherwise, feel free to say hi to me on LinkedIn or Twitter. I'm also in those spaces, and you can find all those links as well on my website. So, I do offer free 30-minute consult with anybody that's looking to learn more about Shopify, or anything like that, or if you just have a project and stuff. If we can cover something that's beneficial or helpful for you in 30 minutes, I am super happy to provide what insight I can there as well. So I'm always really hopeful that I can provide value, whether it's on a call, whether it's on a project, and there's no strings there as far as like, it doesn't need to lead to a project. If I can just be helpful, I consider that a win for sure. So, definitely the best places to find me, starting off with the website. That's always really helpful to get to any kind of special related links there and find any kind of information about Shopify that you can. Also, feel free to hit me up if there's content you want to see. Always trying to look to create content that's really helpful. That's one of my big goals for this year.
Awesome. Taylor, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story and talking a bit about Shopify. This is going to be my worst episode. Oh my God. No, not my worst. I'm bad. You were great. By the way, you amazing. Me, horrible. I shouldn't be a host anymore.
You shouldn't beat yourself up. It happens to everybody, man. It happens all the time. All the time.
Anyway, Tyler, thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your story. It was great and sharing the laughs with me at my fumbles. To my audience, as always, the show notes will have all the links to connect with Tyler, Page Media, all that fun stuff so that you can start your journey as well. And I thank you again for listening. And as always, remember to invest in yourself.
Thanks for tuning in. Now it's time to take the next step. When you're ready to dive deeper into how to launch, grow, and monetize your podcast, Phil's got something special for you. Join him for a free webinar where he'll reveal the 3 secrets that have helped countless entrepreneurs succeed in podcasting. Click the link in the show notes to save your spot, and let's turn your podcasting dreams into reality.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/kidsandfamily. Just go to Indeed.com/kidsandfamily right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.